I'm trying to give you some good information that will help sustain you. If you never went for a Microsoft Project training course ever again, I at least want to make sure you have got this part down pat so that you're not confused. All right? Okay. Let's go to the 7 rules for Microsoft Project. 7 things you absolutely want to do. I call these do's and don'ts. Do's and don'ts for Microsoft Project. You see, the problem is a lot of people didn't learn this. So they get into Microsoft Project and they begin typing in dates, and that's not how to do it. Let's talk about the do's. Number 1, use the auto scheduler like I did. Turn it on. Number 2, link tasks properly, as you've seen me start to do. You ensure the logical task connections. No task should be left unconnected. Number 3, we want reality-driven tasks. We want you to tie all tasks to real deliverables and dependencies. Number 4, we want you to use the right scheduling method. So in Microsoft Project, we got fixed duration, fixed work, and fixed units. This is what scares people. If your project is a fixed duration, no matter what you do, that duration is fixed. Put 20 people on it, it's still going to take a month. Use fixed duration. Use fixed work when the work is constant. So if you have 5 people working 2 hours, 10 hours, right? Whether you have 5 people working 2 hours or you have 10 people working 1 hour, the work is fixed, right? So when we say work, we're talking about hours. Fixed units, when the resource percentage is fixed, Phil is only available for 50% of the time, and that's all you're going to get from him. Then we use fixed unit. You see why it's so tricky? And we could say the formula for these 3 is always dynamic and moving around. But when you use fixed duration, you take away the need for unnecessary thinking of, oh, why has my schedule moved? There's a number of things that I need to tell you, but I don't have enough time. So I'll just leave it at that. Number 5, conduct a what if scenario analysis. Always have a separate version of your Microsoft project. Always ensure when you're changing anything, you've got a plan B to go back to before you made the changes. Because once you make the change, if you're not able to go back, you've messed up the entire schedule. Take it from someone who's been doing this for 20 years, my friends. Effort-driven scheduling, turn it off. Turn it off. Except you understand how this works. You want to look for effort-driven scheduling and you want to turn it off except needed, because you will have a lot of unintended changes. And, I want to say about 95% of the PMs I've met, they don't even need to be using effort-driven scheduling. So turn it off if you don't need it. All right. Number 7, involve task owners. The best way to build a schedule is to get people doing the work. Get accurate estimates from those doing the work. Get them in the room. Don't guess it. Get the people in the room. All right. Here are the rules of the game, the don'ts. Very quick. Number 1, don't enter dates directly into Microsoft Project. You got to avoid hard coding the dates. Number 2, don't leave tasks unlinked. The whole idea about the train station and the carriages, and the front is the engine. And as the engine is moving, how would you like to be left behind in the carriage in the station? You wouldn't like that, right? So don't do it in MS Project. Always link the tasks. Task 1, link to something else. Task 2, link to something else logically. So ensure that all tasks, except the first and the last, all tasks should have a predecessor or successor. The first task should have a successor. The last task should have a predecessor. All the other tasks should have both. Okay? Don't create a Microsoft Project schedule with tasks hanging in limbo. That's illegal. Don't do it. Okay, number 3, avoid bogus dependencies. Avoid artificial dependencies. Use real world constraints. If the tasks aren't truly linked, don't just link them for linking's sake. Don't use fixed units or fixed work without a purpose. Only use complex scheduling when required. Some folks don't know. This is why they're scared of Microsoft Project, because they see changes that they didn't bargain for. Why do they get the changes? Because they got effort-driven scheduling on and they're using fixed units or fixed work without purpose. Number 5, don't skip backup versions. Save a second version of whatever you're doing before making major changes. Trust me, you will cry. You will. So always have a plan B that you've saved. Always back up. Number six, avoid arbitrary resource adjustments. Adjust tasks logically, don't randomly add or remove resources. Number seven, don't ignore resource overallocations. If you are using resource loading and you've got resources in there, address those reallocations promptly. Okay, now I've given you that lay of the land. Let's go back to our schedule to wrap this up. This is going to go very quick from here. I promise. Okay, back to Microsoft Project. So, before I showed you the cardinal rules, we were here, right? We'd done define activities and we had done sequence in the activities. Now we're going to do estimate activity durations. And I'm just going to arbitrarily put numbers in just for the sake of the illustration. So let's put in for researching the ingredients, for driving to the store, it's miles away, buying the ingredients, we'll leave it as one. Notes that there's a question mark. You have to type on top of that question mark for it to go away. Otherwise, it will stay. And sometimes it comes up with pop-ups suggesting things that need to be done. Depending on what your preferences are, always just say okay or say don't disturb me ever again. I don't want to see this notice ever again, depending on how versed you are with the tool. All right. Customer is happy. That's a zero duration event. We call that a milestone. We're going to make that a milestone. So what have we done? Define activities, sequence activities, estimate activity durations. Boom. That's your schedule. Look, a schedule is not even the Gantt chart. Even if we're not showing the Gantt chart, this really is your schedule. It's your start and it's your finish dates for all the activities. That's what the schedule is. So everything else is gravy, right? So when we use the resource name column, that's gravy. That's not necessarily your schedule. But in today's professional world, there's an expectation that you as a project manager should understand how to resource load at least. See? So there are many ways you can resource load. You can type the names directly in, or you could go to one of the views. You could go to the resource sheet view, and from here you can type in resource names. So let's type in a few resource names, and let's say Ben. Okay, we'll put in a few names, and we'll also take liberties to put in some standard rates. Oh, I see my friend David is asking a question. Thank you for coming on, my friend. Can this also generate me an S curve and EVM? So you can get earned value management metrics for sure. ACWP, BCWP, BCWS, all that stuff. Absolutely. The only thing about the S curve, I would rather create my S curve in Excel. That's what I used to do back in the day when I used earned value at Honeywell. We didn't use Microsoft Project, we used a different tool. But I found that Excel could be extremely helpful in generating your S curves and your graphs. It does it a lot better than I would say Microsoft Project even could. So that would be my preference, but great question. All right. So putting in some standard rates, we'll put in some numbers for our employees, just some random numbers here. All right. So we have the resource names and we have their rates. Let's go back to the Gantt chart view. And now that we're in the Gantt chart view, we can actually click on this drop down and select people who we want to assign to the different tasks, just like that. Or you could just type them in directly and their names would be suggested. And bear in mind that what you're doing in allocating these resources is actually also assigning some monetary figures. Let me show you how that works. So for those of you who need to hop off the call, the 15-minute basics is over. For those of you who are brave enough to weather the storm of actual cost and all the other barrage of stuff that I'm going to show, stay behind for another 15 minutes. But if you just wanted the bare basics, what I showed you as far as the activities and all that, that's how you do it. Just make sure you don't type in dates. Make sure you do not start off without turning this auto schedule on. And if you need to go behind the scenes and go into fixed duration, do that. Okay. For those of you that are able to stay behind a little bit longer, let's go ahead and finish this thing because there's a little bit more I need to show you before we can eventually land. All right. So what I wanted to show you, let's right click and insert a column that shows the cost, the damage done. Uh-oh, this is going to be a rather expensive cake by the time all is said and done. But I did it intentionally because I wanted to show you the big numbers and get you comfortable with seeing numbers in the thousands. That's how it looks. So right now, this is a plan. You got to understand this is not in operation at all. This is just a plan. This is what we are anticipating. So if you right click and insert actual cost, there's no actual cost. This is all just what we're planning. The moment you begin working, you see these costs going crazy, going up. Okay. So when you are working in a micro project, if you're resource loading and cost loading, these are fancier things you could reveal. But the typical project manager that I've seen in lots of firms, and I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of firms, they don't get involved in this stuff. Let's hide that column. Let's hide this column. They don't get involved in all that stuff. But I'm anticipating there might be people who want to use it because, true story, in a previous firm I worked for, my job was resource loading and I had 19 different projects in a program and cost loading. And that was my whole job. That was my entire job, doing that on a daily basis, making sure that our government client was happy because our government client loved Microsoft Project and wanted to go into the schedule through the server and ensure that we did what we promised. So you got to understand, when you're working with military, they don't play games. Everything has to be on schedule. So my job was to keep the customer satisfied. Okay. As a result of that, I had to keep track of all these things: actual costs, the cost itself, and it all had to reflect the invoicing, all had to be synced. It was quite a challenging task. And that's where I caught my teeth and became a Microsoft Project junkie, self professed. All right, so let's right click and add something else. Let's insert a column and let's type in actual start and another column called actual finish. Okay, because I want you to get the full picture of this. Okay, so we have tasks, we have costs, and then we also have resources. Okay, what I am going to do next will be familiar to those PMPs, CAPMs who studied that. You ever heard of baselining? And everyone says, what is a baseline? Well, a baseline is the original plan, the plan that was approved by management. See, so if management approves this budget, take a look. If management approves all of these, then you have the beginnings of your baseline. But you don't really have a baseline yet. We got to set that baseline. So I'm going to show you how to set the baseline. Okay. To set your baseline, you of course want to reveal the baseline fields. But before we reveal the baseline fields, we probably need to let management know the total amount as at now. Okay, so for the total amount as at now, we're going over to this Gantt chart format and we're going to choose this project summary task. And what that does is it sums up all the monies and shows you the total cost for the project as is. When you name the file, when you save the file and name the file, this takes the name of the file. So right now we have $6,776 for a cake. This cake had better be good. So if management has approved this, by the way, we have some resource over allocations here. And what this is telling us is Mary is probably not the best resource to use here because you've given her too much. You know, that's my mentor's name. I always use Mary as one of my examples. So let's take Mary out and the resource over allocations, they go away, right? It's very helpful for you to know how the tool works because you can just take the bomb apart and stop, the potential disaster. What makes people scared of Microsoft Project is when they don't know and then they have things like this popping up all over the place and they don't know how to remove them. Okay. But if you are really looking to learn more about this, just go to microsoftprojecttraining.com and you can take a full on course on this. But anyway, back to the story. Let's insert our baseline. I want to show you all the baselines. Baseline start, and let's insert our baseline finish. All right. So we have our baseline start and finish. This is priceless, especially for managements that are nervous or suspicious of their people, because they're always going to ask, is this what we agreed to? What did we agree to? But if you freeze the baseline, it's there, it's etched in stone. Okay. So, how do we save our baseline? We go over to project and we look for set baseline right here. We click on set baseline, hit set baseline, and I want you to look at what happens the moment I hit entire project, just the first baseline, because you got the option of 10 other baselines. So if your project is changing quite frequently, you can have several baselines. I just love what Microsoft did. Gave you 10 plus 1, 11. That is really awesome. 11 baselines. I don't know, but I got to give a shout out to Bill Gates and his people for doing this, because honestly, apart from Primavera, this would be the only other one I say, yeah, you got to learn this. If you're in construction, Primavera is, of course, what a lot of companies use, a lot of engineering firms. But if not, Microsoft Project is in fact, I would suggest learning Microsoft Project first. So did you see what happened? Let's do that again. I just hit it absent-mindedly. Set baseline, and the moment you say okay, watch what is going to happen. These baseline fields are going to be populated, and for special effect, let's just insert the baseline cost. I need you to see these things, okay? Baseline costs. Look at what happens the moment you hit set baseline. The baseline start, finish, and cost are all populated. Boom! Check that out. My friend Joel. Joel, how you doing? Good to see you. Good old Billy G. Billy G is the one. Anyway, jokes apart. Good to see you, Joel. And my friend Luisa, very good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Hope it's going nice in Mexico over there. Very good. So, my friends, the moment you go ahead and hit that baseline button, you got the baseline start, the baseline finish, the baseline cost. And what this does is anchor you back to reality. So, as you're freewheeling and having a great time on your project, spending money, guess what's going to happen? The baseline is going to wake you to reality. Well, you're going to go over budget if you continue like that. You see. So over here, my friends, over here, over here, over here. Remember, we have actual start, actual finish, and actual cost. Now, to show you the flexibility in this tool, let's go back to our project information and let's assume our project actually started last week.